Welcome to another episode of Behind the Dreamers with the Starter Girls. I'm Jennifer Loading.
And I'm Brianna Dreles, and we are talking to the dreamers, the creators, and the magic makers.
These are our friends, these are your friends, and they are living the extraordinary. Today's episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Photographer of Glad Models Agency. If you are here in the Dallas or surrounding area and looking for some photography work, check out Walt Mills. You can learn more about him at photosbywalt.com. And I think we need to give a shout out to our friends at where?
Yes, thank you. At Upbeat Studios with Chloe for all of your event needs. All you got to talk to is Chloe.
Yeah, we love Chloe. All right, we are super excited about our guest here today, and I know our audience is going to be. And so I want to tell them a little bit about you, Elizabeth, and then we're going to jump right into this. So super excited about this. Elizabeth Lombardo is a licensed practicing psychologist with an MS in physical therapy and a PhD in psychology who combines research findings, real life stories, and humor to provide actionable tips that individuals can benefit from immediately. Considered Shaquille O'Neal's head coach for happiness, Lombardo's on a mission to free people from the stress of perfectionism caused by their own inner critics. She's considered the country's most widely interviewed celebrity psychologist with hundreds of radio and TV appearances on shows like Dr. Oz, The Today Show, Steve Harvey, CNN, Fox Business News, and others. And she's been quoted in media outlets, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Money Magazine, Forbes, Women's Health, and Cosmopolitan. Her own articles can frequently be found in Success, Fast Company, Entrepreneur, Better Homes and Garden, and other publications. Dr. Lombardo has the best tips in her new book, Get Out of the Red Zone. It is the book you need to help and guide you to de-stress and focus on things that will make you truly successful. The Get Out of the Red Zone book has everything you need and more to have the right frame of mind to overcome all of life's challenges. And that's what we want. So welcome to the show, Elizabeth. We are so thrilled to have you here today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
And I love this bio. I was
incredible. I'm exhausted listening to it.
Yeah, this is the funniest part of this because Brianna and I talk about this all the time. The bios are like the best part. I love them. I just love reading them. There's so much fun.
It's one of Jennifer's superpowers, reading bios.
I'm like, if you don't need
me, you did a terrific job. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm like, if you don't need me for anything, but just to read your bio, I can like glam you up, like super powerful. So good. All right. Well, I think what we want to do is open this up because I would like to know, and I'm sure our audience would like to know, because, I feel like there are so many psychologists out there, like therapists, psychologists, they're everywhere, but you are kind of a unique individual because you have done all these like just incredible things. And so I'm just curious to know, how did this happen for you? Like, how did you get into this field and how did this come about for you?
Well, so it was my first week of psychology school. I'm madly taking notes as the professor speaking. And I think to myself, why do I have to get a PhD to understand this? Like, wouldn't we all benefit from understanding our minds, at least the basic concepts and how to make our mind work for instead of against us? Because most of the obstacles and challenges and problems that we face in our lives are at least a factor is ourselves, right? And usually it's a bigger factor than we even realize. So it became my mission to really share what I would say bite-sized, digestible information that we know in the psychological research, to share it with the general public in ways that we can understand, in ways that we can apply it so that we can all thrive more in life.
Oh my gosh. I'm already like, where can I find your book? Sign me up. I'm in. And
it's funny because I went to a high school. It was a very small high school. There were 47 kids in my class, and I was friends with all of them. And I would never stand up in front of 47 people and speak because I had such this phobia of public speaking. And then when I wrote my first book, which is called Happy You, Your Ultimate Prescription for Happiness, I learned a statistic. And that statistic is that the average book sells less than 250 copies its first year. And I thought, well, I was going to have my mom and my husband buy a couple dozen each. Like, I got to get people to buy this book. I've got to create a platform. And just to tell you how old I am, this was before social media. Okay. So a platform meant public speaking and being on TV or being in the media. So if I was going to do that, I first had to do a lot of work on myself. So I often say I practice on myself first, apply the skills, become someone new, and then I can share it with others.
I
Wow,
love
that's
that.
amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
And the thing to remember is it's all, everything's in our mind, and it's all about wiring our brain. And so, even if, I've had people come up to me when I'm working with them, they've been depressed for years, decades. How are you going to help me? I've been warrior for decades. How are you going to help me? It's just your wiring of your brain. You didn't come out your mama's womb thinking like that. You learned it, and anything learned can be unlearned and relearned. And I think that's the really fun part is whatever whoever you want to be, you can become that person, not in a superficial pretending, I believe in myself kind of affirmations where part of you is like, I really don't believe in myself. But you can rewire your brain so that you truly believe what you want to believe that will help you succeed.
Yeah. Well, and I was looking over some of your stuff before it, because I always like to do this before the guests come on, so I can be like, what's this person all about? And so much of, because I work with clients too, and a lot of the stuff we talk about are like these paradigms and these limiting beliefs and this, this subconscious wiring that we've brought with us through the years. And right now I'm working with an accelerator, and it's so fun because we're working through adaptive challenges right now and talking about the 6 basic human needs and how the brain operates in the primitive state. And I just, that to me is like, when you talk about this challenge of being able to like reprogram, that to me is so much fun, because it now becomes, it moves away from this whole victim mindset of, oh, this is the way I am, this is the way I think, this is how it's always been, to let me make a challenge out of this and reverse this. And how can I tackle that from the perspective, okay, I'm recognizing that I'm having this mindset that's not right. Now, how do I work to get around that? So for me, it's kind of a game, and I love thinking of it that way. It makes it less of this, I'm a victim to that primitive brain. So
and think of how many people, without realizing it, and this is not a judgment, it is a just an observation, how many people go into victim mode.
Oh, yeah.
Because of their childhoods, because of their marriage, because of their kids. And it's not that those things don't influence us, but it really is what we say to ourselves about them. I mean, I'll give an example. I know you all are from Dallas, and this happened in Dallas, but when I was doing my postdoctoral training, I worked at Parkland, which is a major trauma center. I received a consult one day for a gentleman. He was an electrician who had been working on a wire that was supposed to be inactive, but it was quite active, so that when he touched this wire, a volt of current went through his body and burned him so severely that the doctors gave his wife the following option: we can let him die, or we can try to save his life by surgically amputating both of his arms. So the decision was made to surgically amputate, and 4-quadrant amputation. So putting my physical therapy hat on, like not even something that you could put a prosthetic device on, completely amputated. And I go in thinking, how am I going to help this guy? He's depressed, he's helpless, he's hopeless. And when I went in to meet, we'll call him Roger, he had a smile on his face. And at first I thought he was delusional, but what I found out was his focus was on the overwhelming gratitude he felt that his life had been saved, and the absolute conviction that he was still here on this earth for something positive, even though he didn't know what it was. That was his mindset. And with that mindset, you can imagine he got through rehab quickly. He moved on with his life, and he was able to thrive. It wasn't because he lost his arms that he was later successful. It was because of what he was saying to himself. And I think it's important for us to remember, hopefully most of us will not lose our arms. We're going to have losses. We're going to have challenges. We're going to have obstacles, but it's not those events per se. It's our interpretation of those events that allows us to either move forward or be stuck.
True. Mic drop.
Yes.
Gosh.
Yes.
It's so good because so many of us hold on to those circumstances.
Yeah.
And many of those circumstances, some we have control over, but many of them we don't. And maybe they've happened to us, right? Maybe we're just in the situation, and like you said, it could be a trauma, it could be a relationship, it could be whatever, but we get to decide how to move forward from it, or like stay in the past, right?
Yeah. And
it's hard. It will come up. It'll just keep coming up. I think that's the thing I struggle with most is like, okay, I've acknowledged it and I've moved on, and I'm a pretty positive gal, but every once in a while it'll sneak up on me. And when it does, I'm like, oh, that still hurts. Like, did I really get over it? Because it still hurts. But I think that that's healthy, because I don't know that it's ever going to stop hurting. Like, I think that the situation just sucked and it's always going to hurt, but I'm okay. like, and knowing that I'm okay and I'm still moving forward. I don't know if that's half the battle or what, but.
Well, and I think it's also important to remember, change, dealing with mourning, and I don't necessarily mean mourning, the loss of a loved one, but mourning whatever, a relationship, the life that you want, or whatever, a job. It's a process. It's not like you go through the stage and get to acceptance. And you're like, woo, done, right?
Never think of that again.
We're there, and then we kind of go back, and it's not because we aren't doing it right. It's because that's just part of life. And I always say, when we have emotional pain, and hear me out because this sounds a little sadistic, but it's not. Emotional pain is a good thing. And it's a good thing, just like physical pain is a good thing. If you touch a stove and that is hot and you don't feel the pain, you can get a 3rd-degree burn, right? There's a congenital disorder where people don't feel physical pain. People are like, oh, it'd be so great. It's not great at all, because they have all these injuries they don't know about. You put your hand on a hot stove, it hurts. And that's good, because you pull your hand away. When you experience emotional pain, the question is why? What am I saying to myself, which is what causes our emotions, that's causing this pain? And then you get to address that thought, that belief, that internal conversation you're having with yourself. And that's when you can make the changes.
That's good.
That is good. Thank you. That's a good nugget for our audience.
No, and I agree with you on that too, because I think that, I was having a conversation with my husband, and we were talking, go back to these 6 human needs. And we were talking about this idea of having certainty. And when there's always this level of certainty, you don't have growth, and Brianna, what I was telling you earlier is, you have these 6 and where you place them in order. And for a lot of people, certainty is up at the priority. And then it follows with uncertainty, which I love uncertainty, because that's where all the growth comes from, right? It's the excitement and the growth. Couldn't be a bad thing if you put the wrong things in there. But I think that's what, when you have that pain, that uncertainty, and you have that pain, I think that's when you do the most problem solving and have the most growth. And so I'm with you when you say that you need it and need to welcome that, and finding that gratitude, finding those wins and those learns through that process. And then I think it's like Brianna says, I don't know if it always goes away, but I think you make peace with it. That's how I feel about things. It's like you sort of get to that place where you're like, that happened to me, and what did I get from that? And then, we roll with it, so you're doing awesome stuff.
And a question that I often recommend my coaching clients ask, a lot of times when people feel stuck, they focus on what they can't do. Right. The question is, what can you do? Mm-hmm. What can you do? And I'll share an example from my own life, because I think sometimes people, they hear my bio and I'm this high energy person, and of course she's happy, blah, blah. But my husband, the love of my life, we've been together for over half my life now. 7 years ago was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. 5 years ago, he was trached, so he has a hole in his neck. He's on a ventilator and feeding tube, completely paralyzed, can't move, can't speak. His hands are contracted, which means they're stuck. He can't open his fingers. So in order to hold hands, I put my finger in his contracted hands. That's how we hold hands. To say that it's a challenge would be an understatement, right? Requires 24/7 care. He's at the house. And yet the question is, what can we do? So the other day we were holding hands, and I mentioned earlier, we have daughters who are newly 16 and next week 18. And they had gotten a hold of my husband's yearbook. And so they were looking through the yearbook and making fun of the fashion from, the dark ages, according to them. And they're reading the different inscriptions. And one of the inscriptions was as follows: Dear Jeff, my husband's name Jeff. Dear Jeff, it was nice to meet you this year. I hope to get to know you better. Heart, Laura. The girls are like, Dad, who's Laura? Now he's, turning 60 this year. So this was many years ago. I'm sure he doesn't even remember Laura, but he has this. He can't speak, but he has this, it's an eye gaze board, basically an iPad. Instead of your finger, you use your eyes. So when they said, Dad, who's Laura? You could see his eyes madly typing a response, and he hits the microphone, and out comes, I was a stud. So even during challenging times, as he's, been dying in front of us for 5 years, what can we do is we can enjoy those times. And, you know, of course we were like crying, laughing as it was so funny, but it's those little things, those asking the question, what can I do? How can I find joy in this? Use the word gratitude. Where can I feel gratitude right here and now? Doesn't mean it isn't a challenging time, but it means instead of just focusing on what's wrong, we can also focus on what's right.
I love that. Wow. What a story.
Thank you for sharing that as well. Like, thank you. That was really beautiful. And, you know, I think it's great to hear that with someone like you, who's very successful and doing so much. And, you know, that I would say the outward perspective is like, oh, she's got it all together. She has no issues, no problems, nothing. And then here you are in the midst of this massive, transition and event in your life, you know, but you're still coming to the table to serve others and to share your knowledge and expertise and to love, you know. And I mean, first of all, I commend you for that, but thank you. I want to thank you because it's just amazing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
People, when he was in the hospital for 90 days, I wrote a book because people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's my love. It's my passion. I need to do this for me too. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
Elizabeth, how many books have you done? Because I know you've got this Get Out of the Red Zone. So how many have you? I guess I missed that part. So how many have you done in all?
Let's see. I have a Happy You. I have Better Than Perfect. I have a book called From Entitlement to Intention: Raising Purpose-Driven Children, and Goodbye Imposter Syndrome. And then Get Out of the Red Zone, which is my
nice.
newest love.
Let's talk about that. Tell us about that a little bit. I'm excited. Tell us about it.
So the red zone is, when I talk about the red zone, it's the psychological red zone, not the football red zone. Football red zone you want to get into, psychological red zone you want to get out of. And if you think of stress as going on a continuum from 0, no stress at all, just got off the massage table, life is great, to 10 out of 10, the most stressed you've ever been. A 7 out of 10 or higher is the red zone. So 7 and 8 and 9 or 10, that's when we're in the psychological red zone. And in the red zone, we don't think rationally all the time, and we don't act rationally all the time. So brief, I promise, Psych 101 lecture here. If you think about the green zone as 0, 1, 2, 3, in the green zone, you're using more of your frontal lobe, which is that beautiful structure in your brain that differentiates you from other animals, right? It allows you to engage in executive functioning, problem solving, perspective taking. When we're in the green zone, we can see the not so good and the good. This is where resilience happens. Times are tough. We can get through this, right? This is when your partner does something, you're like, just who they are, not a big deal. As we go up in the scale, our focus narrows. And instead of seeing all positives and negatives, we start to focus more and more on the negatives, such that when we get into the red zone, the 7, the 8, the 9, or the 10, we're focused almost exclusively on the negatives and we can't see the positives. And what's happening on a biological basis is our limbic system, that emotional reasoning, that fight or flight survival mechanism, basically hijacks our rational thinking. I say it's kind of like if you've ever known someone who had too much to drink and they said or did something when they had too much to drink that made a lot of sense to them, and they woke up the next morning, they're like, oh, not such a good idea. That's kind of what happens when the limbic system takes over. And so with this in the red zone, we focus on what's wrong. Evolutionarily, this makes sense, right? If our cave ancestors heard a rustling in the bush and thought, it's probably nothing, they probably wouldn't live another day. Instead, they focus on what's wrong. They take care of the animal, they get rid of the animal, then they get out of the red zone and life is good. The issue that's happening with a lot of people is they are getting into the red zone and they are staying in the red zone. And when they're staying in the red zone, they're thinking in more negative ways. So remember, in the green zone, when our partner did something like, not a big deal, they can do the same thing when we're in the red zone and we have a very different reaction towards it, right? So we think differently in the red zone, the green zone. We act differently in the red zone, the green zone. And in fact, one of the reasons why I wrote this book was because I wanted to answer the question, why do good people sometimes do bad things? And you know, as a mom, I like to think, you know, I'm a good mom, blah, blah. But there were some times, particularly during quarantine, where I say I had not one, but 2 hands over my mouth so nothing would come out as I'm talking to my teenagers. So, you know, we all get into this red zone sometimes. if we can understand, oh, that's a red zone, then instead of letting it control us, we get to take control over it.
Yeah, I like how you put that into perspective because it is so true. And I like this. I'm sure I've had many of those moments, where it's like, I'm just going to stop talking because you're not going to like what comes out of my mouth right now. Right.
Well,
and full disclosure, there are times when those hands should have been there and they were not, right?
They were not. Yes, of course.
We got to do all that. So
absolutely.
No, but
I think now the more than ever, I mean, my husband and I were literally on the couch yesterday talking about, he went to go fill up his gas tank and multiple people around him, either somebody walking up to him or the guy filling up next to him or whatever, were just spouting out nonsense. Like people have lost their minds. Like it's just really bizarre what's happening right now. And I mean, what you said, how people are getting into the red zone and they're staying there. I mean, I think we're seeing it everywhere. And even with gas prices and inflation, like everything happening right now, currently, it's ticking people off. Like they are unraveling.
yeah. Yeah. And again, that they're in the red zone and they're staying in the red zone. The beauty of understanding the red zone personally is I can hopefully say, oh, I'm getting in the red zone. I need to do something to get out. But the beauty also in noticing in other people is instead of personalizing, oh, jerk, why would you do that to me? We can just say, oh, poor dear's in the red zone. Like we don't have to absorb that energy. We don't have to internalize or personalize what they're doing. If we can just say, oh, they're in the red zone. Let them be them. I'm going to be me, and we can move on.
I think that's great. I think that's great because that puts you in a state of recognizing your own self-awareness too. If you're taking emotional intelligence, that's where that comes in. And you're going, okay, I'm not going to try to accept this emotion from this other person, try to figure out what they're doing. I'm just going to say they're in the red zone. Let me back up. I think that's great. I love it.
And it works not just for strangers, but for people So in our household, we have conversations about red zone. And I have, as I mentioned, 2 teenagers with lots of hormones going on. And so, there have been times when either my child will say, I'm in the red zone right now. I need some space. Or I will say it, or the other day, one of my children, I won't say who in case she's listening, one of my children was in the red zone and the other one was getting mad at her for how she was speaking to me. And I just took a step back and said, wait a minute, she's in the red zone. Let's just all take a break right now. Yeah. And so instead of, what could have become this explosive interaction, we just took a break. We came back, we were good.
Yeah, that's good. Good. Well, I love your energy, Elizabeth.
Oh my God, me too.
I love your energy. And when I think this part in your bio where it says the fun, I don't know where it was when I was reading this real life, humor to provide actionable tips. I can totally see this. And I did see some of your work. And so I think you just have great, amazing energy. And I think that's so important when you're talking about these subjects because they're hard for a lot of people because it's really, it's about being mindful of your own behavior and how you're accepting you, because you've got to really, you can't really control other people. All you can do is control how you behave, how you respond, what you take notice of, and how you go forward in the world. And so I think, any way to make this fun for people to understand this and be aware of this is awesome in my eyes. So thank you. I love it.
I do a lot of speaking and work with corporations. And of course, mental health is a big topic right now. Using words like red zone instead of saying you're depressed, there's something wrong with you. It really depathologizes and destigmatizes, that we all have, by the way, we all have mental health, right? If we have a mind, we have mental health. And so to give people tools of how can I address my mental health in a way that feels safe for me, that's one of the beauties of the red zone.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna have to check this book out. I'm thinking.
Is it, out of curiosity, is it available in audio format as well?
Well, that's very interesting you would ask that. It is available because I have recorded it. I'm still talking to my publisher on getting it up on Audible. So that will be happening soon.
Good.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely check it out because I feel like it would be a great tool in our house. Because instead of everybody saying you're being salty today, we can go with you're in the red zone.
Yeah.
That's what my kids do to each other. They're like, you're being salty today. And I like this red zone better. I think it sounds a little nicer than that.
Yeah, because if you're in the red zone and someone tells you you're being salty, that can cause you to really not be so pleased with that. Yeah.
Right. Like, don't tell me I'm being salty today.
You're being salty. Yeah.
This is great. I'm gonna definitely have to check it out. So fun stuff. So what's on that? I guess what's on the next horizon for you? Anything big coming up or another book coming out or?
Well, it's writing a book is like giving birth.
Yes.
You think, oh, it's out, I'm done. And then
Right.
it's not actually. So I'm really promoting this, especially again, with just what's going on, particularly in organizations. Being in the red zone costs US companies over $300 billion annually.
Yeah.
When employees are in the green zone, they have an increase in productivity by 21% and an increase in sales by 27%. So there's a financial reason why it's important to be giving people these skills. And they're just skills. I would say it's like playing golf, right? If you want to be a better golfer, I don't golf at all, but if you want to be a better golfer, you would probably go work with a pro and they would teach you how to do it. And then you practice it. If you learn the right skills and practice, you can't help but get better.
Yeah.
So my mission is really to be getting this out into organizations, into homes, into schools, so that we have not only a common language, but we also have the skills of how do we get out and stay out of the red zone.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that, because I think that is so true, because I think a lot of times, and this is probably people in general, but even in companies, they don't understand that when their humans, their people are healthy within the organization, the company's healthy. Everything about the company, productivity goes up, all the pieces go up. It's like they think that they've got to do this training on let's get all the technical skills right in the company, right? We got to know how to work everything, how to do the sales right, how to do the marketing, all that. But it really comes back to taking care of the people within the organization and getting them healthy, because they show up happier, they're more productive, they want to be there, contribute, team play.
Engagement goes way up, turnover goes down, absenteeism goes down, presenteeism, when people are there, but they're not really there, right? All of that changes when we get people out of the red zone and into the green zone.
I love it. I feel like I could talk to you forever. We would have so much fun. Right now, I've been telling everybody, this is a book I'm going to definitely talk about. My other favorite book that I read is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I can't remember his name. I love that. You probably have it. I love that book.
Over there, yeah.
I love that. That's my other one. I tell people when I'm, like HR people, I'll be like, you need to go read this book, but I'm going to talk about this Get Out of the Red Zone too. Now that you've told us about this, I'm excited to read it. And definitely I like to collect books, and I think, the more knowledge you can gain, and it's good stuff.
No, I'm definitely going to be talking about it. Absolutely. It sounds wonderful. And like you said, I also appreciate how you're putting kind of like a scale, almost like, it's not necessarily a sliding scale, but it's a scale of numbers. The 7, 8, 9, 10 is the red zone, the 0, 1, 2, So remind us though, what the 4, 5, 6, what's that?
That's the yellow zone. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to be careful if you're in the high part versus the low part, but I'll give an example of how this scale can be helpful. I gave a keynote to a company, and the next week we did group coaching with the executive team. I love speaking, and I love meeting after and being like, what worked, what didn't work. So we were having this conversation, and the CFO of the company said, after learning about this concept of the red zone, before every single meeting she has, she asks everyone, including herself, where they are on the scale. She said she had this really important meeting with her financial analyst. They're going to be making projections and plans for the next year. Requires a lot of brain work, right? And her financial analyst was at a 9 out of 10. And she said, I knew he would be no good to me, right, into this conversation. So she rescheduled the meeting. She gave him a gift certificate to Grubhub. They met the next morning, and they had an incredibly productive meeting. What's the message there? We care about you. You're human and don't have to be perfect, right? We can help you, which will ultimately help the entire company. So, even just that one example of how we can be using this to really, really help individuals and ultimately to help the company, the organization.
Wow. This is good. It's good.
Incredible. That's amazing.
Good stuff. Well, I think you gave us a lot of good, I think our people are going to love this. A lot of good, I don't even have to give us a few tips, because I think you just gave us so many pieces of good information in there. And I definitely think, this book is, we'll promote it when we run this through. We'll make sure everybody knows where to go and find it and all that good
Absolutely.
Stuff. Awesome.
So excited about that. Now, can we ask you a couple of fun questions? Do you have a few more minutes?
Yes, of course.
Okay. I've got a good question here.
Okay.
All right. So this is kind of like our round where we're going to ask quick questions with quick answers, but it's usually never quick, but we're going to try it. Okay. Like,
Okay.
what do we call it? Like the
The lightning
fire.
round.
It's
Yes.
supposed to be
Rapid
rapid
fire.
fire, but it's never rapid fire.
Okay. So to start rapid fire, the question I have for you is if you could eat the same type of cuisine for every meal, like every day, what would that cuisine be?
Italian, and I'm going to Italy a week from Saturday, and I'm only bringing elastic pants.
That's good. I actually have a family member that moved to Italy and lives there now, like permanently retired, packed up and went to Italy. So cool stuff. All right. Let's do this. Favorite destination spot?
That I've been to.
Yeah, probably that you've been to.
Australia.
Australia.
I love Australia. Yeah.
Cool.
First concert.
Genesis.
Ooh,
Madison Square Garden.
I remember Genesis.
Ooh,
Yes,
that's
Phil
amazing.
Collins. All right. I just had one and I lost. Oh, favorite guilty pleasure food.
Favorite guilty pleasure food, pizza. I mean, it should just
Still
be like one of,
Italian.
it should just be one of the food groups, I think.
One
But
of the
yeah.
food groups. You didn't say ice cream, so
Okay. I'm going to ask the superhero question. If you could be a superhero or character, like cartoon character, animated character for a day, who would you be?
Well, I'll tell you what came to mind. And I don't know if you remember this person, but it was Plastic Man. So Plastic Man that could reach out and do anything. I don't know why. I always thought that would be so cool just to be like, oh, I'll get that. And it's, over there and I'll get that. And I'm not really a lazy person at all, but I always thought that'd be kind of cool.
it'd be fun to have that. You could stretch your arm, reach up really. You wouldn't have to get a ladder to reach up on the top of
Right?
something. I was
I
thinking
change
about
all the light bulbs that are out, and I
Exactly.
hire someone to get some.
I see these amazing
special
houses, where they have like the nice, like the curtains and stuff like on those top windows. And I was thinking just this the other day, we were looking at this house and I'm like, when we were moving to Dallas, I didn't want to get a house that had those like high windows because I thought we'll never get up there and clean those darn things. See, Plastic Man would have been great.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this has been fun. So Elizabeth, if our audience wanted to learn a little bit more about you, find your book, where do we want to send them?
ElizabethLombardo.com. And not only can you get more information about me in the book, but there is a quiz to determine just how much you are in the red zone. So
Ooh.
go to ElizabethLombardo.com, take the quiz and find out just how much you are in the red zone.
I'm going to go take that quiz.
Oh yeah. I love
Ron's
me.
like, I'm on it.
I know. I love me a good quiz.
Right? I know.
Find out if you're in the red zone. Hopefully you're not in the red zone today because you're traveling. You get to relax a little bit. So, all right, this has been good, been fun. Elizabeth, enjoyed talking to you. And love what
Thank
you're
you so
doing.
much. I appreciate it. It's an honor to get to be on your show.
Absolutely. And so to all of our listeners, of course, if you enjoy our podcast, please be sure you give us a rating, both on iTunes, Facebook, all that good stuff. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube.
And I have a parting thought for us, and it's from Ariana Huffington from the Huffington Post Media Group. Fearlessness is like a muscle. I know from my own life that the more I exercise it, the more natural it becomes to not let my fears run me.
Awesome.
Nice.
All right. And to live the extraordinary, you must start, and every start begins with a decision. You guys take care, be safe, and be kind to one another. We will see you next time.